Hey guys, going to unveil a new deck that I'm kind of testing on. It is a Taking Turns deck in 100 card Singleton. So it's a 100 card Singleton version of the modern deck that has, I guess, accrued some fame. This deck's not great. So the first hand's not keepable. This hand is with a scry to the top, which includes a land card, if I'm not mistaken. So play my island out. Opponent goes Mountain Go. I draw into my Scalding Tarn, go ahead and get a Tropical Island here, and Rampant Growth for a Forest. This will allow me to resolve my Dictative Kruphix on turn 3 and or leave up the counter magic against my opponent. Or they're turn 3. They pass it back, draw another island, which is great because it means we can continue to make our land drops. So I could explain how this deck works, but I'm gonna go through it and you'll see how it works. So this is pretty much exactly how it works. So Dictative Kruphix, draw 2 cards, miss a land drop this turn, unfortunate, but my opponent's also missing land drops. They have Urza's Incubator. I just go ahead and counter whatever I can counter because I'm just biding time to make land drops and eventually get into a bunch of time walks. So I draw into land here, plus a Howling Mine. Because I have a 3-mana counter plus the Force of Will, I just opt to play the Howling Mine out. And right now the name of the game is just don't get beat down, use all the counter magic we can, and bide time until we can get to tons of mana, and eventually take all of the turns. So go ahead and allow them to draw first. Howling Mine, unfortunately, is not unilateral. They cast a Blade Sliver. We just counter it. Alright, draw to a Courser of Kruphix. I decide to resolve it here, which, I get a little lucky and find a land there. Not that it really makes a huge difference in when I can counter. I just start countering everything. Force of Will is fine to pitch here. So I'm going to draw into more cards. This resolves the Crystalline Sliver, but I'm not going to really interact with their permanents in a meaningful way. Find a Forbid. Fetch another land off the top. See a Capture of Jingsu on top. They cast a Heart Sliver. I just go ahead and pitch a Forest, and I believe the Daze. They cast. I look at this, and I think it's not a 1-drop because of Incubator, but then I see it's a 1-drop, and I'm like, oh, oops, why am I trying to forbid this again? I just go ahead and pay the life and counter this as well. Go to the next turn, and, well, get basically 3 turns in a row. Find Utopia Sprawl on top, nothing that special. Right now, really, well, so we just found what we're looking for. Mystical Teachings gives us access to Mystical Tutor. Mystical Tutor gives us access to Seasons Past over and over and over again. So the loop of the deck is very mana intensive, but what it is Mystical Tutor into Seasons Past, and then Seasons Past into like 3 to 4 time walks, then just rinse, wash, repeat, and you can kill with something like Jace. Jace is 1 win con. It just allows you to basically give them a deck of 7 cards and then mill them out with all the draw that's in the deck. So go ahead and top them. And I believe this turn we do go for the Mystical Tutor. No. We just take another turn. We give them the turn back. Because I have Constant Mist. I have a bunch of stuff. It doesn't really matter if they resolve all this stuff. It means their hand size is going to be reduced. So I go ahead and Mystical Teachings here for the Mystical Tutor. Mystical Tutor goes to hand. Seasons Past on top. Draw into Seasons Past. Draw into Anissa. So what I should have done, because this game goes exceedingly long, because I'm like all in on Jace, I should have resolved the Nissa here, because the Nissa is going to be a faster win con. I forgot what her ultimate was, which is actually pretty awesome in this matchup, because it gives you a whole boatload of 6/6s that can just like beat down and kill them. So I go through the combo, Mystical Tutor back the Seasons Past here. So discard a whole bunch of nonsense. Doesn't really matter what we have in our hand anymore. Go ahead and do it all again. No, actually, we walk the Aeons here. I started looking at how much mana it costs to cast Beacon of Tomorrows, which is an 8-mana spell. I think it's an awful lot of mana. And then just go ahead and pass it back to myself. So we continue to draw here. This is our turn 14, but it's more like our turn 7. Draw all of the time walks back again. Cast the time walks all again. And now I think we're floating like 3 turns or something. And while we're doing this process, we're just upticking Jace, and basically it's impending doom for our opponent. If we don't mill ourselves or do something crazy. So At this point, we've milled their whole deck, and they're drawing 3 a turn because they cast Coercive Portal. I don't really care what they cast. They can attack me, they can kill the Jace, but they're basically on a 2-turn clock. I don't even bother blocking here, although I could. They gain some incremental life back, but it doesn't really matter here. I don't really want to cast Temporal Mastery. I actually just want to give them a turn at this point. So, not even up taking the Jace. Right now I'm worried about my clock. So the one issue with a deck like this is it's very clock intensive. And we finally get them at this point. So, game 2, also quite interesting. So we actually figure out what Nissa does in this game and use her to win rapidly, or more rapidly. This hand's interesting, but doesn't quite have enough. This hand's great because it's got the Farseek in it. I believe we put the land at bottom that's on top. They hang an Ancestral Visions. Oh, I'm sorry, we leave Forbid. Forbid's the card that was on top. Because we figure at some point we're going to want to counter magic. Find a Dictate, which means we can either cast that or the Forbid next turn. Or the Nissa, for that matter. Go ahead and find the Breeding Pool tapped and tell my opponent to go. At this point, I believe their Ancestral has 2 counters left. Yep. They resolve a Menace Sliver, which is fine by me. It's not really going to do all that much. I just go ahead and put the Nissa down because I figure relatively soon we're going to get to a point where we can start taking a bunch of turns and use Nissa to win. And there we go. Find a capture. I don't cast it this turn because I kind of want to use it the turn that I can activate Nissa multiple times, or at least flip her and use her once. And just draw more cards. So I do go for the capture here. I debate. My opponent's pretty mana screwed, so I don't really want to cast Dictate quite yet. I want to get my Nissa flipped first and just start getting into another card engine. So draw into a Moment's Peace, which I should have probably used this turn because it would have just made this game go faster. But I'm kind of hell-bent on getting this Dictate down and not getting like mised by something and leaving, so I can leave up the Memory Lapse. So you can get lands with Nissa and just plus her up. I go ahead and just Memory Lapse this, figuring they can't cast something else, and I do Moment's Peace this turn. So at this point we have found the Seasons Pass, but I'm just going to hold on to it because I don't really need to use it yet. And Moment's Peace is kind of like a Time Walk as well. Go ahead and resolve the Jace, draw, setting up for next turn so I can utilize the Nissa to put another land into play. They cast a Magma Sliver, which is a pretty cool card. Basically, it's one half of Timberwatch Elf for slivers only. So end up putting a land on top, drawing into the land, putting it in play with Nissa. I believe cast Beacon of Tomorrows this turn, if Moto will catch up. Yeah. Cast Beacon of Tomorrows for 8 mana. Draw 2 into land. Miss land this time, so put the land on top. Draw it with Nissa. Go ahead and Time Warp here. And I could cast a bunch of other stuff out, possibly technically correct, but I don't. I Miracle into the Temporal Mastery, cast it for lulz. Ultimate the Nissa, make, 36 power in attackers, and just win the game on the spot here. This is the Taking Turns deck. It is not exceedingly interactive. Well, I guess it is interactive in the means that it can actually utilize counter magic to buy time to bridge. But once it gets to its combo, it is exceedingly uninteractive. So that's something that interests you. Maybe it's a fun deck for you. The deck is certainly sweet. And we'll see if I can get a Storm replay to play as well. I know that Game 1 of this match is not going to play, so we're going to have to settle for Game 2, which is interesting in its own right. And hopefully I do not cast Cabal Therapy in this game, because if I do, the game is not going to work. So I know the first game I definitely cast Cabal Therapy. Ooh, it's in my hand, so I may have cast it in this one too. Sand is dubious, but I believe I do keep it because it has the Mental Note plus Visions from Beyond to find lands. It's a 29 land deck, so it's going to have to use its cantrips very aggressively to tutor, or to find lands rather, not tutor. Believe we have a sizable misplay in this game as well that includes the Infernal tutor. So find Diabolic Intent, which is pretty powerful. So we have 2 tutors available in hand, plus 1 mana enabler in the form of Nightscape Familiar. Go ahead and Mental Note here. Find a Peer Through Depths, not great. Ditch to Steam Vents and an Entomb. Entomb, not that great right now, at least. Steam Vents would have been nice to have in hand, though. Pass it back to our opponent, who I believe plays a land and says go to us. We draw to an island this turn, if I'm not mistaken. And Moto's lagging a bit, guys, so bear with me and it. Should have played the island and then left up Peer Through Depths. I believe my intention was to find a cantrip here. And Moto is having some issues, guys. This is a lot for it, I guess. They gamble. This game involves a lot of tutoring and a lot of manipulation, because it is indeed Storm. So go to end step, cast the Peer Through Depths, and we're going to see right now if this game can remember itself. Well, pretty soon I'm going to go on a pause and just see if I can restart Moto, because it's been on for a bit. Find, I believe, the time spiral. Yeah. What I'm looking to do is set up a high tide turn. This is a boarded matchup, keep in mind. So find another island, which is great. At this point, I believe I do leave up the visions and plan on casting it on their end step. Although it may have been more proper to cast it on my turn. Well, the game's going slow enough that it's actually relatively easy to explain, though. Alright, so Scald comes down. Scald's a problem because, yeah, we have 3 islands in play, and that's going to be a lot of damage over time. And the way this deck works is it taps and untaps its lands pretty ruthlessly. Find a Portent, which is kind of punishing because it means we would have rather Visions of Beyond it on our turn. But I don't mind trying to force them to play around some stuff. I'm going to take 3 damage here. Lightning Bolt damage to Portent. I find the land I kind of want here. I put that on top. As opposed to drawing the rest of those cards, which neither of them are bad, but they're not going to win me the game rapidly. I go ahead and take more damage here from the strategic planning so I can make my land drop for the turn. And get rid of the 2 other cards that I don't think are per se necessary right now. So what I'm looking to do is set up, and that was actually a nice draw right there, in the form of Sunken Ruins as well. Opponent just goes ahead and Volcanic Sprays us for 1. So this is where the play error comes in. I cast Infernal Tutor thinking it's Diabolic Intent on this Nightscape Familiar, but I cast Infernal Tutor for no value, which sucks. Meant to cast Diabolic Intent, though. So Diabolic Intent would have been sacking the Nightscape Familiar to go find High Tide, and then likely we would have been able to win on the following turn with High Tide at a much higher life total. But as it stands, they have Volcanic Spray, which is kind of an odd card, but is enough to kill off the Nightscape Familiar because I cannot regenerate it here. Drawn to Jace Vryn's Prodigy. I go ahead and cast him out, figuring it'll probably fetch removal out of my opponent's hand. I kind of want to bide my time here. If I can keep the Jace, I would rather keep the Jace than Diabolic Intent. If my opponent has removal for it, well, oh well. That stinks. Opponent goes ahead and has removal for this. Gets it with a Pyroclasm. Plays a Rakdos Carnarium out. Bouncing, I believe, their mountain. Nope, swamp. Okay. Turn goes back to us. At this point, we're kind of in some trouble. So we're looking for basically any creature card. I believe we draw into Snapcaster, and I'm like, alright, well, I learned my lesson. I'm not going to just senselessly lose more creatures. So I just go ahead and take all of the nugs from Scald, cast out the Snapcaster Mage for no value. Well, I think I target Visions from Beyond, but I'm not going to... If I was at 20, I may cast it here just to get my hand size larger. But I don't think it's worth it, so I go ahead and just target something, and then cast the Diabolic Intent, and actually decide it's probably more worthwhile to salvage the damage than it is to get 1 card, because I'm going to try to go into a Time Spiral turn, and I'm going to untap multiple islands on that turn. Go ahead and Diabolic Intent here. Find the High Tide. And bear with Moto, obviously, tons and tons of tutoring. Alright, say go to my opponent. And next turn I feel pretty well set up to win because I have the Candelabra, which with High Tide is going to double up on all of the earnings I get off of that, as well as Time Spiral, which will do the same. I also have the Seething Song, which I'll cast before casting the Time Spiral to, add more mana. I don't believe, because I'm kind of constrained on black mana, that I cast the Cabal Therapy, and I'm kind of hoping I don't, because Cabal Therapy, unfortunately, any naming card or any card you have to name with does break MTGO. So Burning Vengeance is what they cast, and as you can see, they have stuff like Avacyn's Judgment, Volcanic Spray, which can do an awful lot of damage if allowed to. Cast the High Tide here, just basically tap all of my lands. And I don't use the Candelabra before the Time Spiral because it's very possible that I could draw High Tide again. I go ahead and make all of the red mana. I use mostly red mana to cast the Time Spiral here. Drew well for the turn of note, drawing into the Underground Sea. It's definitely good to have this pre-Time Spiral because it's one additional land with High Tide active. So draw into this nonsense here. Mind's Desire is going to be the way we attempt to win this game. So we're obviously very low on time. We've used most of the clock. This deck, Moto was lagging then as well, so it just takes a while. So I just go ahead and take a bunch of damage. Entomb, just something random. I think Past in Flames, just in case. Cast the Past in... Or actually, I'll pass the Past in Flames. Wonder why I did that. I go ahead and Mind's Desire here, finding this nonsense. And actually, I think Moto is misremembering this game because I did not cast. Yeah, no, it effed up. I think. Yeah, unfortunately, Moto's breaking. I'm going to have to go ahead and restart it, guys, and see if it can actually redo this. So, quick pause. We'll be right back. Alright, so back. We're going to hopefully see if this thing can remember it now. We're whipped back a little bit, so we're back to the Diabolic Intent step, going for the High Tide, found High Tide, and Moto's actually cooking right now. So, opponent cast out Root Medallion and Burning Vengeance, has lethal on the next turn, draw pretty well into the Underground Sea, Underground Sea. Make a bunch of mana off High Tide, and cast out the Seething Song. Do not cast the Cabal Therapy. Draw back into the Cabal Therapy, and I'm hoping I don't cast it here. I Chain of Vapor the Scald. Go ahead and Brainstorm, Manamorphose. Get rid of a Flash Fires just randomly. I believe we do cast Cabal Therapy, unfortunately, here. Yeah, and I think it's going to break Moto. Yeah, because we named Scald for one more spell for the Mind's Desire. Oh. Well... Unfortunately, guys, you don't get to see Storm today, but we Mind's Desire for a bunch. Find a Snapcaster with all the cards that we found with Mind's Desire, which amounts to kind of nonsense. Recast the Mind's Desire, and then Mind's Desire the whole deck, and win the game on this turn. Should have unfortunately happened a few turns earlier, but unfortunately, cards like Cabal Therapy break Moto for recordings. There's no way to get around it, pretty sweet game. I got to use Mind's Desire twice in this game, and then in the last game to procure a win. I think actually this game we Mind's Desired, and we found the Tendrils, but we opted to use Memory Lapse and then force them to draw. Not Memory Lapse, Brain Freeze, and then force them to draw their entire, well, not draw, but ditch their entire library, and then draw into a 0-card library before the turn could go back to them and they could kill us. So, a pretty interesting set of games. Unfortunately, this one's broken. You'll have to take my word that it was pretty sweet getting to Mind's Desire for a bazillion here. Now, given at this point, and the Storm Counter, oddly enough, is working on replays, but does not work in games anymore. Or maybe it just came back up because Moto had to update. But Mind's Desired for a whole ton. But very fun set of games. The Taking Turns deck and the Storm deck, both very cool. Turn 8's really nothing to write home about. This is a slower kill. I think it probably was a turn 6 if we had not screwed up with the Infernal Tutor, as opposed to using the Diabolic Intent on the Familiar that we cast, the Nightscape Familiar. But I hope you guys enjoyed the set of games, and 100 card Singleton, very awesome format, a lot of cool things you can do with, a lot of brewing. Lila Paris is certainly a brewer. I enjoy brewing, and I also play some broken decks, but just like the good decks in the format. But decks like this is pretty sweet. I don't know quite what he's up to, but it looks like it's probably pretty sweet too if it has Burning Vengeance in it. But anyways, I'm going to let you guys go, and hope you guys enjoyed this 2-game set. One game set and then one game with Cabal Therapy breaking the replay on Storm. Anyways, take care now and enjoy.